Hi, BookTube, and welcome to a new video. This is an instant response tag. It was a tag originated by Mark over in the Czech Republic, whose channel is called Book Time with Elvis, and he came up with the Around the World in 8 T prompts tag. That's the number 8 and the letter T, because all of these prompts begin with the letter T. But you see what he did there? Punning on 80. Well, I always approve of puns. So I think I was tagged about an hour ago. So let's see how quickly we can turn this round. Okay, so as I say, these are all prompts beginning with the letter T. 1. Theatre. Do you read plays? If so, tell us about one of your favourites. Well, I used to write plays, and as part of that process I read an awful lot. But I'd also seen quite a few. So I actually penned an article a couple of years ago for a blog, not my blog, an arts blog, on my 10 favourite plays, and gave sort of short summaries of either the play or why I really like them. So I'll post the link to that in the show notes here. But I didn't want to talk about a play that I've seen, one that I've only ever read. So I have a collection of Sam Shepard plays here. This is the Fall for Love and Other Plays collection. But there's a play, I've seen quite a few of these plays, but one I've never seen, and I don't think I want to now. I want to preserve it in my head, having just read it. It's called Geography of a Hallstreamer. It's a very short play. It's so beautiful and simple. So basically, it's a modern day cowboy, sort of growing, lives on a ranch, and he's kidnapped by these two guys from the East. Because they found out that he has this unerring ability to predict the winners of horse races, even though he has nothing to do with training horses, or he doesn't pore over the form. He just has this sort of intuitive, instinctive ability to sort of predict the winners. And they snatch him and they hold him in a hotel, and they sort of get the names of the horses he predicts, and they place money, and they're sort of cleaning up. But he's getting sicker and sicker in this hotel room, and they don't really care as long as he keeps coming up with the goods. And then one day he starts coming up with these names, and they can't find the names of these horses anywhere in the racing papers that are due to run in races that day. And then they realise that he's switched. He's not giving horse names; he's giving dog names. I assume America has greyhound racing. So they just switch over from placing money on horse races to greyhound races with equal success. But the problem is that he's getting sicker and sicker and sicker. It looks as though he's going to die, and therefore the golden goose will stop giving them their eggs. But his brothers burst into the hotel room because they managed to track him down, and they're going to come and take him back to the ranch because that will cure him. It's a beautiful little play about sort of corruption and purity, and about home and family. It's wonderful, and as I say, I don't think I ever want to actually see it performed. Prompt 2, travel. Sadly, we can't travel these days. I see that as a boon perfectly, not only from an environmental point of view, but I've never regarded sort of foreign holidays as a human right, as most people seem to under the pandemic. But anyway, I don't travel at all anymore. I will not go on an aeroplane. I don't go in cars very often either. I will take trains, although obviously not in the past year, and my own feet as far as they can carry me. Anyway, on with the prompt. Do you have a favourite travel writer or travel book to take you away in an armchair adventure? I don't really. I don't read travel writing. In some of my own writing, I travel in my imagination. So I've set books in places that I've never visited, such as in Omar in Northern Ireland, in Kavos, a holiday resort on the island of Corfu in Greece. I have been to Corfu, but I've never been to Kavos. And also when I went, I was a child. I went with my parents, and it's somewhat changed the nature of holiday resorts like that since my childhood. But I will talk about 2 travel-related books. This is called Extreme Rambling by the British comedian Mark Thomas. Now, Mark Thomas is a politically motivated prankster, provocateur. He does all sorts of stunts. So to give you an idea, the Metropolitan Police in London, they have a policeman who's responsible for signing off on protests and demonstrations which is a very hot topic in Britain right now. And Mark Thomas decided that he was going to write to this guy to ask for permission to march, calling for this guy's resignation. And the policeman had a good sense of humour and actually dashed out to Mark Thomas, who sort of stood there having filled out the form, the request form, and sort of said, "Mark, how can I possibly refuse this?" And I've actually met that policeman in my line of work, which is to do about protest and human rights and stuff. And he did seem quite a good egg, really. So that's the kind of guy Mark Thomas is. But what's interesting about this is he sets out to walk around the entire perimeter of the, I'm going to call it an apartheid wall, because to me that's what it is, that separates Israel from the Palestinian territories. And he talks to people, both communities, both the Israelis and the Palestinians, both sort of Christian, Jew and Muslim. You know, he talks to everybody. And he's quite chastened, really, because normally when you're a sort of trendy left-wing sort of, you know, political person, particularly comedian, you're always right and what you're criticising is always wrong. And what you get here is Thomas reassessing the sort of the invulnerability of that. First of all, he's a probably, you know, lower middle class guy from southwest London, you know, trying to, you know, preach the gospel on this wall and everything. So he's aware of that sort of dichotomy, and it's a comedy book to some extent. You know, this is a very serious subject. But more interestingly, there's an Israeli development on reclaimed lands snatched from the Palestinians, and it has a swimming pool in. And Thomas is umming and ahhing about whether he should go in and have a swim in this swimming pool, because, you know, it would, in his own mind, it would be sort of ratifying the act of land grab by the Israelis, which he doesn't really want to do. But he's so desperate for a swim at that stage, having been sort of, you know, dirty and hot and everything, walking around what is essentially a desert, that he does go for a swim, and you know, he's very sort of analytical about the hypocrisy of that. So it was an interesting book, and a book I hated. This is called Car Park Life, and is a tour through British car parks as sort of non-spaces or ignored spaces, spaces that don't, they're public spaces, but they don't announce themselves. They're really a place where you park your car while you do your supermarket shopping. So it's a sort of a transitory, you know, in-between place, in between home and supermarket and back home again. And he will only walk, he will not take a car when he's going into the car park. And this falls under the realm of psychogeography, much loved by authors such as Will Self and Ian Sinclair. And I like the poetics of ruin. I like when spaces have been designed by man for a purpose and they fall into disuse, and how nature may reclaim them, or just, you know, how they basically decay. I like that, and I thought that was going to be an element of this book, which it is to some extent. But the problem is the author reinvests these places as if they're mystical, and they're not. They're concrete car parks. And he sort of repurposes them in his own mind, conferring new myths and things on them. And I mean, I really couldn't see a point, not just of him, if that's what psychogeographers do, I really couldn't see a point. You see, to me, in Sinclair, when he does his walks, he is not repurposing the spaces, he is reclaiming them, saying this is the history that is about to be lost by these places being demolished. Here it seemed to be absolutely spurious investing of value where I didn't see there was value. And also, you know, his marriage falls apart during the writing of this book, partly because he spends a lot of time, you know, instead of being with his family or dragging them around to car parks. So, but if you want to write a book about the collapse of your marriage, then write a book about the collapse of your marriage. It's not psychogeography. Oh, I hated it. I will post the link to my 40-minute rant on that book. 3. Time. Which book took you the longest time to read, and why was that? I'm not sure the exact answer to that. I'm going to offer 2 things, and I haven't finished either of them, so they're still ongoing. This is La Medusa by Vanessa Place, and all the cover should have been this sort of bright, sort of strong pink, but I've had it so long, it's sort of been sat on windowsills and stuff, that it's got bleached by the sun, and look at the state of that. But it was published in 2008. I would have referenced it in something else after 2008. I wouldn't have got it, because I hadn't heard of Vanessa Place. I wouldn't have got it when it was published. So I'm guessing here I probably got it about 2014. So that's 7 years ago. And I started it, I got 100 pages into its 400 and something pages, put it aside. And I am definitely going to pick it up this year and finish it, because I'm actually going to restart it and finish it, because it is one of my chosen gargantuan books, maximalist books. So let's assume that I first started in 2014. That will be 7 years. And this is Alistair Gray, Every Short Story, from 1951 to 2012, coming in at over 1,000 pages, I think. No, not quite. 900 pages. Now, I'd read some of these collections when they were individual collections, and again, I'm not sure exactly when I started this. I did buy this quite soon after publication. As you can see, it's a hardback. It was published in... Alistair Gray died not that long ago, maybe a couple of years ago. Published in 83, I think. Oh no, what I'm talking about, that's the first collection, was published in 83. I don't know when this was published. Anyway, I'm still battling through all the collections that I've already read in here, because they are in chronological order of publication. So I haven't even got to the ones that I haven't read. And the reason I put it down is I was only ever reading it in small bursts anyway, obviously. But the reason also is that I'm completely off short stories, which doesn't augur well for this. So this will probably take longer than even La Medusa. 4. Traditional fairy tales or nursery rhymes. What are some of your favourites, and what are some you would not think suitable for kids today? All of them. I'm not into fairy tales and nursery rhymes, but to that extent, I will say I write about them in my upcoming novel that's out in July. I talk about several nursery rhymes, and I've also composed a Marxist nursery rhyme, because about when that Greek Marxist government came into power recently, everyone suddenly reinvented themselves as Marxists again. I studied Marx at university, so I'm quite familiar with it. I'm not and never have been a Marxist, but I have penned a Marxist fairy tale, which you will have to buy my new book in July to find out. It's the penultimate story. 5. Tasty. Food, glorious food. What are some of your favourite books about food? Again, I don't have any. I don't do food reading. But I will say one of my favourite dining scenes in a fiction book was Babel 17 by Thomas Delaney, a sci-fi book, where the crew of a spaceship are invited to dine on a planet owned by basically an arms dealer. And this guy, there's an assassination attempt during the meal, and while all these sort of laser bullets are flying around the hall and sort of food's being shot up and stuff off the plates, these mechanised serving things which come out of the table and serve, they're still doing their job even as food's being shot up off the plates. It's very funny and it's very well choreographed. You can really envision it. So that's my favourite dining scene. 6. Terrible. Who is a truly terrible (brackets nasty) but memorable character that stands out to you? Well, any of Houellebecq's characters are pretty terrible. I suspect they're all strongly based on Houellebecq himself. I think he is the arch misanthrope of the 20th and 21st century. So they're pretty, but highly enjoyable for me. I know Houellebecq's not to everyone's taste. I'm a big fan. But another, I can't remember the character's name. This is Tibor Fischer's The Thought Gang, and it's about a con man in the UK who's a complete parasite and leech off other people. But basically he pulls off one con too many and has to flee the country, and goes over to France, where he he hooks up with 2 bank robbers, one of whom only has one arm, and they continue to carry out sort of more and more grandiose bank robberies. But the thing is that he is a philosopher, and throughout his sort of run of bank robberies in France, he and the other two guys are discussing the philosophy of the morality of what they do. It's very entertaining, but he's a terrible human being. But there is a certain charm to his thinking, because he does think it out as to what he's doing. 7. Truth. The truth is often stranger than fiction, they say. I'm not sure I'd agree with that, but anyway. I mean, fiction is the work of the imagination, so should always be able to outscore truth. But anyway, give us some examples of this from your extensive reading. The other thing is, I don't know if it's because I'm a writer and an employer of imagination, but I don't really find either truth or fiction that surprising. So, for example, this is called KLF, Chaos Magic and the Band Who Burned £1 Million. So the KLF were a hugely successful chart band who basically came out of punk, hated everything to do with the music industry, and decided they were going to subvert it from within. And they came up with these sort of, formulas for hit songs, which they were proven to be correct, and they made huge amounts of money. And then they quit the music industry at an award ceremony at which they were being honoured. And they took £1 million cash from their bank, and they went up to one of the Highlands in Scotland and allegedly set fire to it, burned £1 million. And there are sort of samizdat sort of video clips of this and all this sort of stuff. This book tries to get to the bottom of it. Did they actually do it? If they did, why did they do it? That's a very, in a way, from the outside, you say that's a very strange and heinous act to burn £1 million, rather than give it away to people who needed it, kind of thing. And there's a lot of that sort of thinking going on here. Right to the last, it's almost like sort of a death row inmate. Right to the last minute, they were umming and ahhing whether they were going to do it. That's if, in fact, they did do it. But this book, as well researched and written as it is, never really gets to the bottom of it. So it's not surprising, because you're not really any the wiser. And another book, also non-fiction, this is Nikolai Lilin, Freefall, a sniper's story from Chechnya. So Lilin was conscripted into the Russian army, proved to be a dab hand with a sniper's rifle, was sent into a specialist sniper's unit. And this was a book about his experiences. And it is chilling, it is modern warfare, pre-internet cyber warfare, obviously. They were against Muslim fundamentalists who all gathered to support the Chechens. It was a very brutal war. It was a bit like the Nazis and the Soviet soldiers in the Second World War, that you'd rather die than fall into the hands of the enemy as a prisoner, because of the abuses and the torture that would be put upon you. So, for example, corpses were mined, so that when people came to bury soldiers from their own side, they were booby-trapped and stuff, and various body parts cut off and, rearranged elsewhere in the body as messages to the other side. I mean, it was just shocking and terrible and horrible, but it wasn't surprising, because, war is not a good thing, huh? And one of the things about war is you want to intimidate your opposition, your enemy, into not having the heart for the battle. So, ugly, chilling, all of those sorts of adjectives, but not surprising, not strange. Strange behaviour in that it's sort of inhuman behaviour, but not strange in the sense of, gosh, that is beyond my imagination. 8. Tag. Make up an 8th prompt, tea prompt, directed to those you wish to tag. Please stick to the theme of tea. So before I give you what my tea theme tag is, the people I'm going to tag are Brian at Bookish, Sina at Beating Around the Books, To the Lit House, and Attention. That is the name of the channel. Sorry, I don't know your actual name. He's the guy who sometimes does things with puppets and plays a mean guitar, like Ziggy Stardust. And the tea theme I'm going to give you is Triptych. Now, you can take that one of two ways. Either a book that's in 3 parts, or a series of 3 that form a sort of literary triptych, or if you'd rather, you could talk about literary works on art, be it fiction or non-fiction. So I'm throwing that open to you to go whichever way you want. So thanks very much to Mark at Book Time with Elvis. Now I need to edit this rapido and upload it speedily. Till next time, thanks very much.